The rope cut into his skin. His palms were raw. Blood mixed with the red clay on his hands. Below him, a sheer drop of 40 feet. Above him, the sky was tearing apart with explosions. The air screamed. Metal shrapnel buzzed through the smoke like angry hornets. He was alone on the edge of the world. If you appreciate stories of true courage under fire, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel now. We bring history back to life every week. On that jagged cliff, there was no cover, no trenches, no walls, just one man standing exposed against the gray skyline. He held a rope in his hands. He did not hold a rifle. In fact, he had refused to even touch one. To the men in his unit, he was a liability, a joke. They thought he was crazy. But on this day, on top of the Maeda escarpment, that unarmed man was the only thing standing between death and 75 wounded soldiers. It was May 1945, Okinawa. This was the final doorway to Japan. The fighting here wasn't just war, it was a slaughter. The terrain was a nightmare of jagged coral and limestone. The Japanese army was dug deep into the rock. They had caves, tunnels, hidden bunkers. They called this specific ridge the Maeda Escarpment. The Americans just called it Hacksaw Ridge. It was a meat grinder. The task was simple. Take the cliff. Break the line. But the cost was impossible. Private First Class Desmond Doss looked at the ground. It shook violently. Every artillery impact sent a shock wave through the soles of his boots. He adjusted his helmet. It felt heavy. His medical aid kits slapped against his thighs. He took a breath. The air was thick, hot, humid. He wrote later in his journal, "I knew I could not leave them. I knew I would not be able to live with myself if I left them there." The assault began at dawn. The details of the world sharpened into terrifying focus. The smell of cordite was overwhelming. It tasted metallic on the tongue. The smoke was white and phosphorus dense. It clung to the ground. Through the haze, he saw the flashes of machine gun fire. They looked like camera strobes in the dark. Men were yelling. The distinctive crack of Japanese Nambu pistols echoed off the rocks. A soldier near him stumbled. He fell face down into the mud. Doss didn't hesitate. He ran forward. The mud sucked at his boots. He slid into a crater next to the fallen man. The soldier looked up. His eyes were wide. Panic. "Doc, I can't move my legs." Doss tightened a tourniquet. His hands were steady. "You're going to be fine. Stay low." Then the ridge exploded. The Japanese army had waited. They waited until B Company was fully exposed on the plateau. Then they opened the gates of hell. Mortars rained down. Machine gun fire swept across the flat rock like a scythe cutting wheat. It was an ambush, total devastation. The order came screaming over the radio. Retreat. Get off the ridge. Fall back. The Americans scrambled for the edge of the cliff. It was chaos. Men threw themselves over the side, sliding down the cargo nets. They ran for their lives. The smoke swirled. In minutes, the plateau was abandoned. The attack had failed, except for one man. Desmond Doss didn't run. He stood in the smoke. He looked at the carnage around him. Bodies lay scattered everywhere. The groans of the wounded drifted through the haze. The enemy was coming out of their caves now. He could hear them. They were moving through the mist, looking for survivors. Doss opened his diary later and noted, "I prayed to the Lord. I said, 'Help me save just one more.'" He crawled toward a shape in the dust. A soldier, bleeding heavily from the chest. The man flinched when Doss touched him. He thought it was the enemy. "Doss, is that you?" "Quiet. I've got you." "They left us, Doc. Everyone left." "I didn't." Doss grabbed the man by the collar. He dragged him across the jagged rock. Bullets snapped over their heads. Thwack, thwack, hitting the dirt inches away. Doss stayed low. He hauled the weight of the man all the way to the cliff edge. He looked down. It was too far to drop. The cargo nets were cut or tangled. He looked around wildly. He saw a sturdy tree stump near the edge. An idea formed. It was dangerous. It was slow. But it was the only way. He took his rope. He tied a double bowline knot. It was a special knot he had learned as a kid in Virginia. It made a seat. He looped it around the stump for leverage. He lifted the wounded man. The soldier was heavy, dead weight. Doss strained. His back muscles burned. He lowered the man over the edge, feeding the rope through his raw hands. Slowly, gently, down into the waiting arms of the medics below. One down. Doss pulled the rope back up. He turned back toward the smoke, toward the enemy. He found another man, blinded by debris. He guided him to the edge. He tied the knot. He lowered him. The rope burned his palms. The skin began to blister. Then the blisters popped. 2 down. The Japanese patrols were getting closer. He could hear their footsteps on the gravel. He waited. He held his breath. He was unarmed. If they found him, he was dead. He lay flat among the bodies, playing dead until they passed. Then he moved again. He found a man with a shattered arm, dragged him, tied the knot, lowered him. 3 down. Hours passed. The sun began to set. The sky turned a bruised purple. The darkness should have been safety, but it only brought fear. Flares popped overhead, bathing the ridge in a ghostly, wavering light. Every shadow looked like a soldier with a bayonet. Doss kept moving. He was exhausted. His uniform was soaked through with sweat and the blood of other men. He had no water. His lips were cracked. But he kept going. He found a soldier who had been left for dead hours ago. The man whispered, "Leave me, Doss. I'm done." "Not on my watch." He dragged him. The artillery started up again. The ground heaved. Rocks rained down on his helmet. Doss shielded the wounded man with his own body. He waited for the barrage to stop. Then he kept dragging. 10 men, 20 men, 30. His hands were a mess. The rope was slick with blood. He could barely close his fingers. His legs shook with every step. He was operating on pure will. He crawled back into the kill zone. He found a man near a Japanese bunker. He could hear the enemy soldiers talking inside. He moved inches at a time. Silent, invisible. He grabbed the American soldier by the boots and pulled him away. Inch by inch. 40 men. He looked up at the sky. He was dizzy. He whispered into the darkness, "Lord, help me get one more." He went back. He found another. He dragged him to the edge. He tied the knot. He lowered him. "Just one more. Lord, give me the strength for one more." He went back again, and again, and again. The night wore on. The pile of saved men at the bottom of the cliff grew. The officers down below couldn't believe what they were seeing. Men they had written off as dead were coming down the cliff face, one by one, dangling from a rope held by a single pair of hands. 50 men. Doss was hallucinating from fatigue, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. As long as there was a breath left on that ridge, he wasn't leaving. 60 men. Finally, the sun began to crack the horizon. The gray light of morning revealed the truth. Doss stood at the edge. He was the last one. He had cleared the ridge. He lowered the last man. Then, finally, He tied the rope around himself. He slid down the cliff. He hit the bottom and collapsed. His clothes were stiff with dried blood. His face was black with gunpowder and dirt. He couldn't even hold a canteen to drink. The officers counted the survivors. They counted the wounded who had been brought down during the night. They checked the roster. They checked it again. They couldn't make the math work. 75 men. One man, without a weapon, had walked into the fire and carried an entire rifle company to safety. According to the official U.S. Army report, the number was estimated at 75. Doss himself was humble. Years later, he would argue with the interviewers. He said it was probably only 50. The Army said it was 100. They settled on 75 for the official citation. Desmond Doss became the first conscientious objector in American history to receive the Medal of Honor. He stood on the White House lawn, shaking hands with President Truman. The man who wouldn't touch a gun wore the highest honor a soldier can receive. Archival records confirm that he didn't stop there. Days later, in another battle, he was wounded by a grenade. He had 17 pieces of shrapnel in his legs. He waited 5 hours for a litter carrier, and when they finally came to get him, he saw another soldier in worse shape. He rolled off the stretcher. He told them to take the other guy. If you want more stories about the incredible people who shaped our history, make sure to subscribe. We are dedicated to keeping their memories alive. War is usually measured in destruction, in territory taken, in enemies killed. We glorify the fighter. We praise the sharpshooter. But on a blood-soaked ridge in Okinawa, one man showed the world a different kind of power. He showed us that the strongest weapon on a battlefield isn't a rifle. It's the human heart. Desmond Doss walked into hell armed with nothing but his faith. And he walked out with 75 lives in his hands.